Welcome back for the third and final part of our Elden Ring preview. Now, I recognize last episode was probably more interesting for folks that are speedrunners or avid PvPers, but this episode is on those new and altered gameplay systems I keep mentioning, and a lot of this stuff is really fun, and I can't wait to show you footage of it, so let's get to it. Mounted combat in Elden Ring is a lot of fun and also gives you a lot of options as far as what you can do while mounted. We're almost approaching a Mountain Blade level of cool stuff you can do while riding a horse in this game, and it's really kind of neat how different weapons have different effects. Now you can just swing your light attack button to sort of swat at enemies while you're on horseback, but also you have a strong attack, and if you hold down your strong attack, you go into sort of a joust mode where with heavy weapons especially, you can bowl down weak opponents and then end with a powerful attack that can even knock large enemies off their horses. As far as our traditional on-foot combat goes, Elden Ring has a combination of most of the systems that you've seen in past Soulsborne games, or some variant of them. It has a stealth system that is fairly forgiving and makes it easy to sneak up and get backstabs on unaware enemies. There's a guard counter system where after blocking an attack, you can respond with a heavy attack that also leaves you open for a little longer. Abilities like parry still function the same as in past games, but they're now part of the new Ashes of War system and can be manually swapped out. I really like the way the Ashes of War system works because it combines the ability to assign elements and effects to weapons like we've had in previous games, with being able to choose special weapon abilities and assign them to any weapon you want. So as opposed to in past games, there would be boss weapons or special weapons that had unique abilities, but you would often need weird stat requirements or they would scale to other stats that weren't your primary, whereas now you can take pretty much any piece of equipment besides a few rare ones that have pre-assigned abilities and effects. And you can choose, like say you could have a fire sword that shoots lightning bolts, or you could assign no element to it and have it be keen or quality, and yet still have it do some sort of projectile attack. It's a really neat way to be able to pretty much have your cake and eat it too, where you can take your favorite weapon and have it do what you want completely, right down to its special ability, and not having to sort of pick and choose between what you want to use for your build. These weapon and shield abilities can be quite varied, from a heal over time to a defense buff to all range of offensive attacks. And while sometimes these kind of start to verge into the territory of spells, they also consume FP, so there's definitely balance to it. A melee-based character wouldn't just be able to spam an attack that's like a strong offensive spell. Speaking of magic, a lot of your old favorites return. Now, it's split into sorceries and incantations. Incantations are what have traditionally been miracles and pyromancies. And I'm just going to show them all here in the menu, and then I'm going to demonstrate them all in order. You can go back in slow motion if you want to pore over the descriptions. But just an interesting little thing about this is when you talk to the spell vendor, she tells you that within the world, sorceries are derived from the stars and from meteorite fragments that you pick up as glintstone and are used to enhance a lot of magical items and things like that. And then that incantations come from the sap of the Erd tree. So what's really interesting about that is it's another callback to Evergrace, and I might do a video on Evergrace connections in Elden Ring once I play it and see how many there really are, but I keep noticing them even just in the basic stuff in the network test. So I thought that was interesting of a callback to a From Software game from 20 years ago that wasn't hugely popular, whereas it's not rare for them to do references to their other games, but it's usually current or more recent games. So it struck me as odd that there have been so many references to an old and fairly obscure From game. But yeah, back on topic, there are a huge variety of really cool and fun to use spells in this game. I've also mentioned the Summoning Ashes before, and it's another one of my favorite new systems. It's really cool to have another option when you need a little help and you can't find anybody online to play with. They're not extremely effective. Some of them, like, here's looking at you, super slow, super weak, noble sorcerer. But at the very least, they create a little extra chaos and something else for enemies to attack besides you. And some of them, like the wolves, can create a lot of chaos, And the Northern Mercenary is just tremendously entertaining in his one-man army suicide rush into whatever enemies are nearby when you summon him. I had a ton of fun with him. The Wandering Nobles also are pretty good at creating a lot of chaos, and you could actually, if you want, just run straight through enemies while they distract them, and that is a pretty useful, viable strategy that makes it easier when you're just trying to run through an area and you don't really want to deal with it. This makes it a little easier to just sort of deploy some minions out there to take some of the guff off you. And yeah, it's something that softens the difficulty a little bit, but a lot of times, once these games, especially once they get a year or two old, there's nobody online, and unless you're in one of those runs where everybody comes back to play the game for a month or something, you can just not find any help, and some parts can be very difficult. So I like the idea of, rather than being so restricted to NPC summons in one specific location, in a lot of areas within the game, you can use these Ash summons. And it's just, a little bit of extra help, though they're nowhere near as useful as a human player or even an NPC summon. Finally, we have the Wondrous Physics, which are custom potions you make that can restore health or FP, but also can have effects like exploding when you take them to knock enemies back and give you some breathing room. It's pretty cool. I think that's about all I've got to say for this preview, but I do want to leave you with a little bit more footage and some more of this cool music. I want to mention that Scott Buckley and Miu are the two composers I've used for the music in this video series. They're two composers that make music for copyright free. You can use it in your videos, and there are links in the description. I highly recommend them if you're a content creator. Some of the tracks are pretty good just to listen to. But let me leave you with just a little bit more footage to watch, and I don't think I'm going to do a spoiler video showing stuff like the game running in retail mode, the debug menu, character creation, things like that. If you want to see that stuff, there are lots of channels putting footage. I just don't really see the need, and I can always go back to all that footage once the game is out. So that'll do it for our preview. Thanks for watching Deconstructing the Game. Please enjoy the rest of this footage, and I will shut up.
you.